Hey guys! So I did some more thinking after Sunday's video, and even though I had said that I was planning on putting this topic to rest after that video, I realized that I actually have a lot more to say, and I feel like I could have been a lot clearer in explaining why I've come to the conclusions that I have, why I'm now comfortable considering these brands right here to be free of animal testing, and why I don't automatically trust the word of a nonprofit organization over an independent, cruelty-free blogger. If you missed my previous video, you may want to watch it just to kind of fill you in on what's been going on in the cruelty-free community. But to sum it up really quick, at the beginning of January, a well-known cruelty-free blogger, Susie of Cruelty-Free Kitty, announced that she was adding these brands back onto her cruelty-free brand list. Although these brands all sell in mainland China, Cruelty-Free Kitty announced that because of the changing laws there, she is now confident that these brands are not engaging in pre-market or post-market animal testing in China in 2023. Since she made that Hi, baby. But after Cruelty-Free Kitty's announcement, there's been some debate in the community as to the accuracy of her post. Leaping Bunny, which is a program overseen by the nonprofit organization called the American Anti-Vivisection Society, posted a TikTok implying that these posts were inaccurate and that if a brand wants to sell in China and remain cruelty-free, then they must join the Leaping Bunny China qualification program so that Leaping Bunny can guarantee that there's no animal testing going on from start to finish. So, quick backstory to explain why I have an opinion on this. Before YouTube was my main gig, I worked in the nonprofit sector for 5 years, including with a couple of animal rights nonprofits. And after those experiences, I decided that I will never work in a nonprofit again as long as I can help it. I became very disillusioned with nonprofits when I learned that these charities can be just as money-driven as for-profit companies. It's simply a different type of business. And you might be thinking, well, nonprofits are literally not-for-profit, so how can they be driven by money? Well, in order to operate, nonprofits rely on funding, and each nonprofit is going to have a different funding model. And there are a lot of different funding sources that nonprofits can use, but among those are things like grants, corporate sponsorships, individual donations, and the list goes on. But according to the National Philanthropic Trust, in 2021, the largest source of all charitable donations came from individuals. That represented 67% of all charitable donations that were made in the US. Now, typically if a nonprofit is relying on individual donations, a large chunk of that is going to be coming from major donors. And these are often like multimillionaire philanthropists, and these philanthropists can use their donations to reduce their own tax liability. So if the nonprofit is relying on funding from these major donors, usually once a year, the fundraising team will meet with the major donors and essentially pitch to them why they need X amount of money for the following year. And this is often a stress-inducing time for the employees of a nonprofit because they're having to essentially prove why these donors should keep giving their organization more money, even though many nonprofit employees may never earn much more than minimum wage. The organization has to make a strong case, providing evidence as to the cost effectiveness of the prior year's funds, what results were obtained since then, and why they need more money this year. So ultimately, the most important question to a nonprofit becomes not what action is going to make the greatest impact, but what message is going to sell to our donors. Something else I learned in my nonprofit experience is that exploitation of workers is often worse in nonprofits than in for-profit companies. I've seen this time and time again in the animal rights nonprofit sector, where a nonprofit's funding contributes to massive salaries for those in executive positions at the nonprofit, oftentimes white men, while the employees of the nonprofit, who are oftentimes women and minorities, who are the ones doing the real work to produce results and to secure more funding, are barely earning a living. This is nothing personal against Leaping Bunny or AAVS. I have zero experience working at or with either of these groups, but I say all of this just to illustrate why I personally don't give more credibility to nonprofits over other voices in the cruelty-free community. So with that being said, I'm going to share a screenshot from a website called GuideStar, which reports on nonprofits' financials and operations. You can look up pretty much any nonprofit on this website. And this is the revenue and expenses from 2019 for AABS, which is the nonprofit that oversees Leaping Bunny. you can see the breakdown of their revenue. So it looks like around half of their total revenue came from what they categorize as contributions, grants, and gifts. And I do believe that would include individual donors. A small chunk came from program services and membership dues, and another almost half of their revenue came from what they call other revenue. So I'm not sure what that means, but just want to put that out there. That's the only information I could find on Leaping Bunny's funding, but I want to make it super clear that I don't know any specifics as far as the funding model that AAVS or Leaping Bunny uses. And I first want to say that I've always respected the work that Leaping Bunny does. I've been using their cruelty-free brand list for years, and I do not want to belittle any of the results that they may have achieved to reduce harm to animals. However, we do know that Leaping Bunny has a financial stake in perpetuating the idea, whether it's true or not, that pre- and post-market animal testing is a major issue still needing to be controlled or solved in China, and that they, and they alone, are the only ones trustworthy and reliable enough to handle such a task. And as I mentioned in a previous video, Leaping Bunny says that in order for a brand to sell in China and be cruelty-free, then they must join the Leaping Bunny China Qualification Program. And they must pay Leaping Bunny to perform audits so that Leaping Bunny can guarantee that there's no animal testing happening from start to finish. That's what they say. Now, presenting hard evidence that these audits are effective or necessary at preventing the use of animal testing on cosmetics is kind of beside the point, or at least it's not as important as the vested interest that Leaping Bunny has in getting as many brands as possible to join the China Qualification Program, as they receive tax-exempt donations in order to fund and run this program. On the other hand, I find it highly unlikely that Susie from Cruelty Free Kitty has any sort of financial stake in this animal testing in China debate. She is going to have her livelihood as a blogger, whether or not these brands are listed on her site as cruelty-free, and to the best of my knowledge, she doesn't accept payment in exchange for including a brand on her cruelty-free list. And for the past 3 years, she was staunchly against including these brands on her list because she believed there was a chance of post-market animal testing in China. So I don't see why she would change her stance on these brands without having good, solid evidence that these brands are not at risk of animal testing. So in other words, all I'm saying is that I know that one of these two entities has a financial stake in this issue, and that is Leaping Bunny. And again, to be clear, I'm not saying that Leaping Bunny hasn't done great work in the animal rights space. I'm not saying that many nonprofits don't do great work, or that they didn't start with good intentions in spite of potential financial or political interests. I'm not saying that all nonprofits are just money-making scams. That's not what I'm saying at all. As I said before, I do not want to deny any of the positive things that Leaping Bunny has done for animals. But here is what raises a few questions in my mind, given my experience working in nonprofits. Leaping Bunny is not showing us, at least as far as I know, any evidence that when a consumer in China complains about an allergic reaction to a product, that the Chinese government is then storming in to the drugstore and seizing those products off the shelves to take them back to a lab and shove them down a rabbit's throat. Yet it kind of seems like this is what they want us to believe is happening. I mean, this is verbatim from their TikTok.
Post-market testing. Yes, this is still happening. So if a user has an allergic reaction or there seems to be some complaints about a certain product, it immediately triggers the Chinese government to take that product and put it up to animal testing.
It immediately triggers the Chinese government to take that product and put it up to animal testing, whatever that means. As far as I'm aware, Leaping Bunny has never shown us evidence that that is what's actually happening. And Leaping Bunny also has not shown us evidence that this work that they're doing with this China program is effectively preventing animal testing from happening. In contrast, other prominent voices in the cruelty-free space have taken the stance that post-market testing in China is no longer as much of a concern as they originally thought. Jen from My Beauty Bunny made a blog post in 2020 explaining why she's concluded for herself that after speaking with consultants in China and other organizations, not only is post-market testing extremely unlikely to happen, but that it no longer involves animals. This is what she said in her blog post. I've learned from a consultant in China that no post-market testing has been done in China in the last few years. It's all public record. And the main reasons are that it's too expensive and the results take too long. In the event of a complaint, they would rather gather non-animal testing data from the brands directly and do human patch tests and things of that nature. In addition, brands would be contacted first in the event of a complaint and ask for additional safety data. The company would be able to decide if that was an animal or non-animal test. The authorities would have the option to do additional animal tests at that point, but the public record shows that that just isn't happening. I don't see a reason to believe that Jen has any sort of personal or financial stake in this issue. I can't think of anything that she'd have to gain from making this post. If anything, she may have lost followers because this was kind of an unpopular, controversial opinion, therefore potentially jeopardizing her livelihood over this. Now, you may argue that it's possible that Jen and Susie are misinformed, while Leaping Bunny has an office in Shanghai, so they are better able to monitor what's going on over there. In that case, then, the burden of proof that post-market testing is happening in China should be on Leaping Bunny. Now, fast forward to 2021, Jen from My Beauty Bunny made another blog post exposing some major loopholes in the European Union cosmetic animal testing ban. Now, if you didn't know, the European Union technically has imposed a ban on animal testing for cosmetics, but there was actually a report that came out that found that under REACH legislation in the EU, many ingredients used in cosmetics were required to be tested on animals. Jen from My Beauty Bunny and Bunny Army are some of the only voices I know of that actually communicated this issue to the cruelty-free community. And so from that blog post, she says, a survey of products at 2 European Union retailers, one high-end and one mass market, found over 400 cosmetics that likely had ingredients tested on animals. The products included hair care, skincare, and makeup products. The brands probably do not know about the test because there is no current process in the EU to tell them. In Leaping Bunny's response to this, they admit it's possible that some Leaping Bunny certified companies may have unknowingly had their ingredients tested on animals under EU's REACH legislation. They said, we understand that there may be instances in which certified companies have unknowingly obtained ingredients that are not in compliance with our standard. In these instances, we will review each situation on a case-by-case basis and determine whether the certified company can remediate the situation and remain certified. Yet, Leaping Bunny insists that it is the only source that can guarantee that a product is cruelty-free from start to finish. In the statement on their website, they said, we are absolutely convinced that in spite of potential lapses, our list of certified companies is the most trustworthy list available of brands that do not test on animals. They claim that the entire process is vetted by them to ensure that nothing can slip past them. So then why is Leaping Bunny pouring so much of their resources and their messaging to us, the consumers, into this China issue and not the EU? It seems to me that these EU REACH laws could potentially be harming animals on an even wider scale than what's going on in China. But if anything, if these loopholes are causing animals any harm at all, this should be just as much of a priority to Leaping Bunny as the China situation. So my question is, why was this not getting as much attention as China's testing laws? Most cruelty-free consumers have it drilled into their heads by animal advocacy organizations that China is the enemy. They're the only country that still requires animal testing, while the EU is esteemed as being one of the only countries that has put a ban on animal testing. But that's a lie. We have proof that many so-called cruelty-free products in the European Union have had their ingredients tested on animals. So where is the Leaping Bunny EU qualification program? Now, I'm not making any specific claims or allegations here, but if we strictly follow the money, China's population, and therefore their potential market, is 3 times the size of the EU. So I'm just going to put that out there. So we've established that animal testing can happen in other places besides China, But let's not ignore the fact that a huge part of Leaping Bunny's rhetoric is targeting China specifically. If animal testing is not a huge threat in China, Leaping Bunny could lose a large segment of their marketing budget. And their relevance as an authority on animal testing could be affected overnight if no brand thinks it's worth it to pay to become certified to sell in China with their label. So this is where Leaping Bunny has a financial motivation to maintain the idea that animal testing is still a major issue there, because their relevance as an authority could take a hit even if merely the public perception of this issue shifted, even if animal testing in China was actually a problem. So this is where Leaping Bunny's motivations just become a lot murkier, to say the least. So this right here is why I put more trust in independent bloggers like Jen. In her post on the EU REACH legislation, she says, "I think it's important to note that we don't need to create hate for any particular country, China, EU, etc., or its citizens. We just need to change the laws." The fact that she made sure to mention this, that it's not about us versus them, that at least makes it clear to me that her motives are not tied up in othering certain countries and their citizens. All of that aside, let's zoom out a little bit and consider the fact that this debate on post-market animal testing in China only accounts for such a teeny tiny blip in the overall beauty supply chain. To contrast, unlike post-market animal testing, we have visible evidence of child labor happening in mica mining for cosmetics. And mica is the mineral that's usually used to make beauty products shimmery and sparkly and pretty. You can find videos about this right here on YouTube. Go watch the Refinery 29 documentary after this video. I'll link it below. Great crash course in what is happening in that part of the beauty supply chain. And this isn't the first time that I've considered letting go of the cruelty-free label. To be totally honest, in 2020, after my beauty bunny made her blog post on Wet n Wild, Physicians Formula, First Aid Beauty, those brands, and why she was adding them back to her cruelty-free brand list, I wanted to add those brands to my personal list of okay brands, but I was too afraid of the potential backlash that I might get in doing so. And past me also would have been too afraid to make this video right here. But it's 2023. I am done suppressing my opinions because I'm afraid that somebody might disagree with me or not like me. I'm done with that. No more. This is how I really feel, and I feel that it would be disingenuous for me not to share the extent of what I think about the situation. So this is me kind of officially shedding the cruelty-free label. I still plan to do my best to only purchase from companies that, to the best of my knowledge, don't test on animals. Because we have so many resources available on this subject, I want to use those to at least try not to support animal testing with my dollars, even though it's becoming increasingly clear that we can't necessarily be sure that even if something is certified cruelty-free, that doesn't necessarily mean it is, but I'm going to continue to do my best. But it's not really going to be a focus on my channel from here on out. I know a lot of people are probably going to be very upset with me for making this video. And, you know, I normally don't do commentary videos because if I don't feel like I actually have something to add to the conversation, I'm not going to waste your time. But I want to make it super clear once again that everything I said in this video is merely my opinion, and I'm not trying to make any accusations against any organization or individual in this community. We all have to take the information we have and the experiences that we have and make our own judgment call. So I really just wanted to clarify why I've made the decisions that I have, and you know, you don't have to agree with me, of course, but I encourage everyone to be discerning and not necessarily take everything that a business or nonprofit says at face value. I hope that all better clarifies my stance. For real this time, unless something totally earth-shattering and new comes out on the subject, this is the last video that I'm going to be making on this topic. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching. Subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more of my videos, and hopefully I will talk to you very soon in my next one. Bye.